So in Throne and Liberty, one of the most important aspects of the game is being able to farm. And like a lot of you, I am a tank player who doesn't actually have access to a lot of DPS gear. So in today's video, I'm going to be giving you guys my build that I use to actively farm in PvE and still be effective. This build has helped me get all the gear that I currently have. And while I'm not a DPS based character, the farming is actually pretty reasonable and it does so much to help me push my character into getting good gear. I've been using this build since the launch of Throne and Liberty. Let me show you exactly how I make the build. Quickly before we dive into the build, I just wanted to say this build is designed to help the tanky players who uses swords and great swords be able to farm effectively. Generally speaking, the gear that you're going to see is for players who are free to play and who are tank players, so you're very likely not going to have access to full-fledged DPS gear. I do have DPS gear because I play an abnormal amount, but I did want to make sure you guys understand who this video is for, because there is better builds for DPSs, but again, this is for tanks, so you're going to be a little bit more focused towards like HP, maybe strength, endurance, stuff like that. So just keep that in mind. And I know you guys see that I have 4,500 Lucent. I am a full-fledged free-to-play player. As you can see here, I just sell everything, so I play the market, and that's why I have money. But when it comes to the money that I earn in the game, this is purely from playing free-to-play. I have a guide for that on the channel if you want to check it out, how I do it. But I just want to be transparent with you guys because I do, claim to be free to play, and I am. With that disclaimer out of the way, let's go over the stats and the gear. We have 30 in strength because we want the HP and, it actually scales our damage. I generally like to get 30, 30, 30 on everything because it's easy as a baseline for every character. 30 dex will give me crit. 30 perception will give me hit chance, and it makes it easier for me to hit. I don't have optimal gear because I'm full free to play, so I'm just building around what I have, and this is the best stats I can do as a full free to play player. I have 634 hit chance with this build. Magic defense is 1,200 and melee defense is 1,400. Once again, we're a tank, so I did, it's just how it is. For gear, I'm gonna quickly go over it, but if you are a free to play player and you are a tank and you have other DPS based gear, I would ideally try to look for damage based stats. Things that's gonna give you hit chance, things that are gonna give you crit. Maybe not so heavy into HP regen stuff whenever you're farming, but again, I'm gonna go over the gear just so you guys can see what I'm using. We're using the heroic helmet of resistance for max HP regen, warlord shroud for the hit chance and the health regen. This is actually pretty decent. We got the plate armor of resistance with melee endurance. We have the resolute commander with the attack speed and the max HP. We have the trousers of resistance for max HP and melee evasion. We have the glade stalker boots for hit chance and max HP. We have, this one is actually pretty new, the ornate choker. This is giving us more HP as well as mana cost efficiency. It's actually pretty decent. We found 2 of them recently. We have the Kuzanite bangle, max HP, silent resistance, bind resistance, doesn't do crazy there. We have the Abyssal Grace Band, which is going to give us more attack speed and mana cost efficiency. And finally, we have the Belt of Combat Prowess, melee defense, melee evasion with some bind resistance. Once again, the gear isn't that important, but this is what we're using. For our greatsword, we have the Greatsword of Banshee. We got this randomly from a box or something. It has dexterity and collision chance with hit chance. Is actually pretty valuable. The hit chance is going to be the hardest thing I think tanks are going to struggle with, but I was able to get it to 600 from the last video, which was 400 and something, so it's actually a lot better. For our sword and board, this is again my weakest piece, but I don't have anything better. It does have collision chance and strength on it, so this is actually pretty decent for farming compared to my tanking. But yeah, this is what we have. Going over the skills, and this is objectively the most important part of this build. Let's go over it. First, we're going to be using stunning blow. This does a stun effect. That's purely the purpose for it, and it's basically to set up a combo that I use where if I have one specific enemy that's kind of strong or they just need to be bursted, you'll a lot of times run into elites when you're fighting and farming, and being able to single target DPS is actually important to that as well, because you should be trying to kill the elites too. So you can see we'll use stunning blow. This will stun the enemy. Whenever they're stunned, you can use ascending slash. Ascending slash will actually knock them down to the ground, which is going to put them on the ground for 2.5 seconds, which is really good. And then you want to pick up guillotine blade, which is your main damage dealing single target thing, and it's going to deal increased damage to enemies who are on the ground, and this is a perfect way to actually give yourself a ton of damage. This is probably the meta combo in PvP, so you'll probably be very familiar with it. Next, we're going to be having strategic rush. This is going to be our primary mobility skill. The reason for this is that it gives collision, and collision is important to this kind of build because one of your passive, which is called morale boost, whenever you collide with targets, it helps reduce the cooldown of your skills, which is going to have you have a higher uptime on doing your abilities. And having mobility is always good so that you can go steal the things that people are trying to farm from you or steal from you. Next, we're going to be picking up Will Breaker. Will Breaker is going to do a couple of things. First off, it's going to weaken the target so you can deal more damage. When you're doing AoE stuff, a lot of your AoE skills does good damage, but they're not like crazy. And being able to weaken them is actually really nice. And also it's going to help you with your evasion with some of the skill specs we're going to cover in this video, unlike what I did in the last one. And this is going to help you with that so you can like actively make sure you hit your target, especially if you have lower hit chance like I do. Next, we're going to be picking up Da Vinci's Courage. You don't have to use this if you don't want to. I farmed for a very long time and I get hit here and there. But this is just going to give you increased HP. It's going to give you health regen, and it's going to give you attack speed. And it's just useful for just keeping you alive. It's not too much mana cost, and it's like a reasonable cooldown. So this is going to be your major sustainer. Next, we're going to be picking up Frost Cleaving. This is the Gaia attack that's been morphed. This is, again, just going to give you AoE. Typically, what I do is I'll use Devastating Smash, which will put me in position to be like in a group of them after I pull them. And then I will use this to follow up. And it'll just do some AoE damage that really helps your build. So it's actually really nice. Next, we're going to be using Piercing Strike. Piercing Strike is your main easy load cooldown DPS skill. It has like 6-second cooldown, and it does a really big cleaving arc that can actually hit so many targets. And with it being a 6-second cooldown, is really nice for helping you out with just being able to deal with ad clear. I think it's really great, so you should be using it. Next, we're going to be using Cruel Smite. We're going to attack 3 times in a row, and with the fact that we added Cruel Smite to it, which is kind of weird that there's a passive named Cruel Smite on Cruel Smite, it actually gives you a bit of AoE on it. Once again, it's a fairly low cooldown, 9 seconds, so this is really great for farming. Next, we're going to be picking up Annihilating Slash. This is your really big AoE slashing ability, and you're going to use this generally at the start of your fight whenever you're grouping enemies, and this is going to give you lower cooldown whenever you actually hit more and more enemies. So this is actually really good after you weaken them with your, what's this ability called? Will Breaker. So you could Will Breaker, you can stun in, Will Breaker, spin twice, since you'll have 2 charges of it. And seeing that you hit so many enemies, you're going to actually reduce the cooldown, and you're just going to do a lot of extra damage, seeing that the combo works really well that way. So this is going to be really good, and this is a sword skill, so it's really nice. And then finally, we're going to be using Ice Tornado. This is going to be a really solid skill because one of your passives, this one, Victory Morale, this is going to deal damage with, whenever you deal damage with skills, you're going to get mana and you're going to get HP back. And when you're pulling big hordes of enemies, this is going to actually give you, generally speaking, at least sustain or a little bit more on your resources, depending on how many enemies you're hitting. And it says do not apply to damage over time effects, but this doesn't count as a dot. This is just you casting a skill that's channeled, I guess. But yeah, you actually just get a lot of extra like sustain, and it does really good AoE if they're like debuffed with weaken, so it actually helps you to farm really fast. For our passive skills, we're going to be picking up Robust Constitution, more HP regen. I like this because this is a good sustainer. Next, Vital Force. This is going to give you more hit chance as well as stun chance and skill boost relative to your HP. Again, you're a tank focused build because tanks need to farm too, and this is going to give you some extra damage, which actually synergizes really well. Next, we're using Cold Warrior. This is going to increase all your like basic attacks, your melee, your magic, all that stuff by a good amount if they're stunned or shocked, which you actually does a good amount of stun. If you run them into the wall with the Strategic Rush, you can stun. When you hit them with the Stunning Blow, you can stun, and when you hit them with the Devastating Smash, sorry, you can stun. So this is actually going to make it easier for you to actually hit your attacks. Once again, you're not the best hit chance, but this helps a lot. We covered Victor's Morale a second ago. This is going to be a good way to sustain your mana as well as your HP, so it's really good. Next is Raging Frenzy. This is going to increase your skill damage boost by 75 when you have 3 or more enemies like near you, and since this is a farming build, you're always going to have 3 or more enemies near you. Next, we're going to be using Barbarian Dash. The reason for this is very simple. If you can move faster, you can group faster, and you can like get things done faster, so it makes sense to have it, because while defense and offense is good, being mobile is just as good too, so you can farm fast. So that's why we have it. Next, we're going to have Indomitable Armor. Whenever you take hits, it's going to be increasing your defense for pretty much everything by 220 for 2 seconds, and it can stack up to 3 times. You're going to be farming, you're going to be getting hit. So this is a great way to help you sustain. I know you're generally a tanky build, but you're not using tanky skills, so you know that's really important. And then finally, we're going to be using Morale Boost whenever you collide with targets, which you'll be able to do fairly easy with things like your Strategic Rush. This is going to help with your cooldown management because your cooldowns can be a little bit long, but yeah, this is what it's going to be. Next, we're going to go over the skill specialization. I didn't include this in the last video because I actively hovered over them and I thought you could see it at the bottom, but a lot of you wanted to see it. I didn't want to overinflate the video, but in the future videos, if you guys want to out skill specialization, just wanted to quickly explain the reason for that because a lot of you left some comments about it. But let's start off with the greatsword. We're getting Cruel Smite. This is just going to give you that AoE burst on it, which is really good. Next, under Stunning Blow, you're going to be picking up cooldown reduction. The reason for this is very simple. This one has a 20.4 second cooldown. Then you'll hit them with the Ascending Slash, which has a 20.4 second cooldown. And then you're going to finish with Guillotine Blade, which has a 20.4 second cooldown, which means this is a combo that's going to work with each other. Of course, it's going to be off by a second because you have to activate the skill. But basically, they're within the same burst window of each other, so you can use it. And that's the reason for this. Under Da Vinci's Courage, you don't necessarily need these things. But again, it's going to depend on how healthy you are generally when you're playing. Again, we're going to get duration, we're going to get instant healing. It's going to make it easier for you to sustain. Under Ice Tornadoes, this is going to evolve it to do that ice effect, so you want to pick that up. And then we want cooldown reduction because we actually want this up as much, and it gives a flat 5 seconds, which is actually really good. Most skills give a percent, that just gives a straight up reduction of a raw number, which is really, really solid. For Ascending Slash, we're going to be getting damage increase and cooldown reduction. Once again, we want the cooldown to be synergistic with each other, but the damage increase is actually really good because you're going to go stun into your lift, which is this ability, your Ascending Slash, and then the next skill gets a ton of damage, which is going to be your Guillotine Blade, and you're going to do a ton of damage with Guillotine Blade, and you'll notice you'll have some really chunky numbers to help you finish off that single target. So that's what this is for. Next, we're going to get Frost Cleaving. This is going to give us the frost effect on the cleaving, and then we're going to get crit hit chance, so it makes it easier for us to crit. It does some okay damage. It does a double hit, so you get some decent damage out of this. Will Breaker, we're going to be getting area damage chain, so it does an AoE around you since you're going to be farming. You're going to get evasion decrease because it makes it easier for you to hit things on your following attacks. So this is really, really good. Then we finally going to end with Guillotine Blade, picking up everything. You can get more damage, cooldown, and this is going to give you a small AoE, so you can, in theory, burst a lot of enemies if you are using this to kill targets and you don't have anything else, so it's actually really good. For our sword and board, we're getting Piercing Strike with the Piercing Strike modifier. This is going to make it so you do the little AoE splash on it. And then we're going to get crit hit chance to give you a pretty good solid crit hit on it. And this has a 6 second cooldown. It's one of your lowest cooldown skills, and it's kind of valuable to have. We're going to be picking up Strategic Rush. Under Strategic Rush, we're going to get target affect targets. This is just going to make it easier for you to hit multiple targets and group them. Honestly, you only have 3 points left over when you get the important stuff, so I figure it'll be good in here. And then finally, we're going to be getting Annihilating Slash. You get 2 uses when you use consecutive use. And then Radius Increase is going to give you some Radius Increase, so you can actually hit all the targets. And that is the skill specialization. So for our Weapon Mastery for the Greatsword, we're going to be going the bottom row. We're going to go all the way to Fierce Glare. And then we're going to come into the Incapacitate. We're going to get all the way to Complete Stun. I think this is better than this tree, but kind of go what you want here if you prefer to get more defensive stuff. For our sword and board, we're going to be getting Skillful Block. We're going to go all the way up to max HP here, and then we're going to go to Collision Tree, and we're going to be picking up all the way to Calculated Rush because these things actually give you damage. It's going to give you hit chance. This is going to give you collision chance, HP, melee hit chance, base damage, boss endurance, and then it's going to give you more HP, and this is actually pretty valuable. Ideally, whenever it's all said and done, I do think that it's important to finish out this tree all the way up until probably about base damage, and then this tree until about melee hit chance, and that's where I would personally stop. You could argue going to this for cooldown speed, which is actually pretty nice. I actually think getting more hit chance is actually more valuable for the build. But again, you know, just kind of tailor this a little bit towards what you have. So this is what I like to do. And there you have it, guys. That is my PvE farming build for my tank based players. Once again, this was with the intent to help tank players who doesn't have access to a ton of gear, which most players probably won't unless they're kind of swiping for it. This basically just gives you the ability to be able to actually farm fairly effectively. Again, there's a lot other options that you can go with if you're going with full DPS gear, but if you're using tank gear like I am, this is going to be probably the best build for you. Let me know down in the comments what you would change, things you have questions for us, anything like that. And also let me know what kind of build you would like to see in the next video. I did want to start putting out some PvP stuff in you know, for you guys. So I may do that in the next coming videos, but let me know what you guys think. And yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe. That helps the channel out a lot. And I'll see you in the next Throne and Liberty video very soon.